My name is Claire Durand. I am 32 years old and I am an architect. I live in an apartment on the 6th floor of a building in downtown Mesa, Arizona. It is my sanctuary, a space where the morning light filters through the enormous picture windows and bathes my blueprints and my models in white. Every corner, every piece of furniture, every book on the shelf, I earned through my own hard work. It took me almost 7 years of double shifts, instant soup dinners, and nights when exhaustion overcame me at the drawing table. Nobody helped me. It was a solitary path paved with discipline and caffeine. And yet, in a single sentence, everything I had built with so much effort was about to collapse, like a glass of red wine spilled on an immaculate tablecloth. Before we go any further, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. I love seeing how far this little story can travel. Let's make this space feel a little more connected, no matter how many miles are between us. The Durand family dinners were a ritual as predictable as a Swiss watch. The first Sunday of every month in a cream-colored 2-story house in the East Valley, where my parents, Robert and Paula, have lived for 35 years. I arrived 10 minutes late on purpose. It was my small and silent act of resistance, a mute protest that shouted to the universe that I was no longer the obedient daughter who nodded at everything. My father, Robert, opened the door. His hug was brief and formal, a formality. My mother, Paula, was in the kitchen moving with that frenetic and controlled energy that characterized her, supervising her famous roast. And my younger sister, Carly, 26 years old, was already sunk into the living room sofa, her gaze lost in her phone, as if the rest of the world did not exist. Carly is beautiful, charismatic, and always arrives at family events with a new crisis under her arm. This week's crisis, her heart was broken by a rich fiancé who had left her. "Claire, sit down. I have just reheated the roast," my mother said without even looking at me. I nodded and entered the dining room. The fresh tablecloth, the perfectly aligned glasses, everything seemed like a set, a stage play. I had a premonition that the script for that night was already written, and I, of course, did not have a single line. We had been eating for about 20 minutes when my father set his cutlery aside and cleared his throat. The unmistakable family signal that an announcement was about to arrive, and it was rarely something I wanted to hear. "Carly needs a stable place to stay for a while," he began in the same tone he used to read stock market reports. "We've talked it over and have decided that she will move into your apartment." I almost stuck the fork in my hand. I set my glass down on the table very slowly. "Excuse me. To my apartment?" "Yes," my mother added, pouring more wine for my father. "You have 2 bedrooms and you're always traveling for work. That office of yours is a waste of space." "And it did not occur to anyone to ask me?" I said, trying to maintain an even tone, although I felt my throat beginning to burn. Carly looked up from her plate with a smug little smile. "I only need a few months, Claire. Just until I get my life in order. Mom and Dad's house is very small, and your apartment is perfect. It makes all the sense in the world." She said it as if she were presenting a campaign strategy, not invading someone's personal life. Then I laughed. A dry, bitter laugh erupted from my throat without me being able to stop it. If I could have seen my reflection, I think my face would have looked cracked like old porcelain. My family's reaction was one of pure bewilderment followed by palpable offense. "My office is not for rent," I said with no trace of humor left in my voice, and I do not remember agreeing to any of this. My father sighed, a long, tired sigh of someone dealing with a problematic employee. My mother opened her planner. "We already bought some very expensive furniture for her room and hired a moving company for Saturday. Since you will also enjoy the furniture, we expect you to pay for half. It is 15 suitcases and 8 boxes. She needs her things to be comfortable." I felt as if I were watching a movie for which I did not audition. Everything was already decided, rehearsed, and staged, except that the protagonist, the owner of the damn apartment, had not even been asked. I dropped my cutlery on the plate, making a sharp noise. "I do not agree with this." "Claire," my father said, and his voice dropped an octave, becoming dangerous. This is family, and family helps each other. Oh, really? I replied, feeling a dam break inside me. Then why does Carly not sleep in your living room? Or in Aunt Carol's basement? Or why does she not rent her own place like I did 10 years ago when you told me it was time to grow up and be independent? The silence that followed was suffocating. Robert, my father, glared at me. His face hardened, and he slammed the table with the palm of his hand, making the glasses clink. As long as you bear the Durand name, you will show a minimum of respect, he shouted, his face red with anger. I stood up, pushing my chair back. I looked him straight in the eye, then at my mother and my sister. My respect is earned, not imposed. And my apartment is not a charity warehouse. Excuse me. I walked out of there without looking back, leaving a thunderous silence and 3 faces full of indignation. The war had been declared. I drove through the night back to my sanctuary, my apartment. The echo of my father's blow on the table still resonated in my ears. The adrenaline from the confrontation was beginning to fade, giving way to a dull, familiar pain, the pain of old wounds that never quite close. Every red light was a pause to relive an entire life of being the reliable one. The invisible daughter who never caused trouble and therefore did not deserve consideration. A sharp memory assailed me. I had once been accepted into a prestigious summer architecture camp in New York City. It was my dream. But just before it was supposed to begin, my grandmother fell ill and my mother informed me, not asked me, that I would stay behind to take care of her. And the camp? I asked in a thin voice. Family comes first, Claire, she declared. That same summer, my older brother, Matthew, not that he was much older, took off on a European trip to find himself, fully funded by our parents. Nobody told him that family came first. Another red light. Another memory, university. I earned a full scholarship to UT Austin. I cried with joy in the library bathroom when I got the letter. But the scholarship didn't cover everything. I worked as a waitress at night and on weekends to pay for materials, transportation, food. Meanwhile, my parents paid, without question, for the 3 different degrees that Carly started and abandoned because she didn't feel the passion. Not to mention Matthew's multiple failed ventures, a bottomless pit where my father's money vanished under the label of seed capital. And then, the most bitter memory. Not long ago, I had pneumonia that landed me in the hospital. I called my mother to let her know, my voice weak with fever. Her response was flat, distant, "Oh, what a nuisance. Well, drink a lot of soup. I'm busy helping your sister. She just broke up with that boyfriend and is devastated." She hung up. Nobody visited. Nobody asked if I needed anything. My illness was an inconvenience. Carly's emotional crisis was a tragedy that demanded the full family's attention. The favoritism in my family was never shouted, it was a current, a constant dampness that weakened the foundation. Matthew was the visionary. Carly, the delicate jewel to be protected. And I was the functional rock. The load-bearing beam everyone took for granted. Expected to carry weight. Never to complain. I arrived at my building, and the security guard greeted me with a smile. I took the elevator up and opened the door to my apartment. The silence and order welcomed me like a hug. I turned on the lights and walked through the space that was mine, only mine. I felt a cold, clear fury. A determination I had never experienced before. It was no longer sadness. It was not resignation. It was the calm before the battle. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and called my best friend, Claire. She's a lawyer. Brilliant. As direct as an arrow. "Claire," I said as soon as she answered, my voice strangely serene. "I need you to help me build a reinforced concrete wall." "It's over." I told her everything. The dinner. The announcement. The slam on the table. Claire listened without interrupting, only letting out the occasional "what bastards." "First things first," she said at the end. "Check your condominium's bylaws." Look for the guest clause. And Claire, this isn't going to be pretty. Your father doesn't know how to lose. You need to anticipate his moves. Prepare for the worst. I hung up the phone and felt different. The architect in me had taken control. I was no longer reacting. I was designing. I opened my files and started searching for the bylaws. Then I gathered the deed to my apartment, my bank statements, every receipt and invoice that proved my absolute financial independence. I was building my case. Brick by brick. Fortress Claire was about to be put to the test. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to allow a single crack in my walls. The next morning, I met Claire at a coffee shop near her office. I brought a folder with all the documents I had gathered. She reviewed it with an efficiency that calmed me. Perfect, she said, pointing to a paragraph in the condominium bylaws. Here it is. Any guest or visitor whose stay exceeds 15 consecutive days must be formally registered with the administration through a simple loan for use agreement signed by the title-holding condominium owner and the guest and must be approved by the surveillance committee. She smiled. This is our nuclear weapon. The strategy was simple and brilliant. I needed a legal guest. Someone with a signed and registered contract. Someone who would make it impossible for my family to force Carly into my home. The occupant had to be someone real, with a genuine need, so no one could accuse me of fraud. Who are you thinking of? Claire asked. My mind worked quickly, ruling out option after option. And then a clear image came to me, Eric, a colleague from the firm. A computer engineer who had recently mentioned that his building was undergoing renovations and he was looking for a temporary place. Eric was the antithesis of my family's chaos. Calm. Methodical. Respectful. Almost pathologically tidy. He was perfect. That same afternoon, I called him. I was direct and professional. Eric, I know you're looking for a temporary place. I have a proposal for you. I'm offering my apartment at no cost. I paused. In return, I need you to be the guardian of my peace. I explained the situation in the most neutral way I could, omitting the more sordid details and presenting it as a complicated family matter. My family might show up Saturday with the intention of moving my sister in my apartment. Your only mission is to not let them in. Show them the loan for use agreement we'll sign and offer no further explanation. And if it's not too much trouble, if you feel comfortable, I added, remembering Claire's advice, an audio recording of any interaction would be a huge help to my lawyer. Eric was silent for a moment. I braced myself, thinking he would say I was crazy. But then he answered, his voice calm as always. Claire, you're saving me from a ridiculously overpriced hotel. Consider your peace guarded. Count on me. A wave of relief washed over me so intensely, I almost choked up. That night, Eric came to the apartment. Claire had drafted a simple loan for use agreement, legally ironclad, airtight. We both signed it. The following morning, we presented the contract to the building's administration. The administrator stamped and filed it without a question. I gave a copy to Mr. Peterson, the head concierge, an elderly, kind man who had seen me many nights hauling blueprints and model cases up the elevator. I explained, briefly, that I'd be hosting a legal guest for a while. He nodded with an understanding look that said he didn't need any more details. By Friday afternoon, the plan entered its final phase. I changed the lock to a high-security digital model and gave Eric his own access code. I installed a small security camera, the kind that connects to your phone, pointed directly at the front door. Then I packed a suitcase with clothes, my laptop, and my most important documents. My jewelry and valuables went into a safe deposit box at the bank. That evening, I received a message from my mother, "Don't forget your sister's movers arrive tomorrow at 10 in the morning. I hope you already have the room ready." I didn't reply. Instead, I got into my car and started driving west, my destination, Joshua Tree, California. A place where no one knew me. Where wine, silence, and the raw desert horizon might finally help me mute the noise in my head. Before turning off all my family's notifications, I sent one final message to Eric: the stage is yours. Thank you. And stand firm. The architect had designed the fortress. Now all that remained was to see if the walls would withstand the siege. That morning, I woke up in a room at a boutique hotel overlooking the iconic Joshua trees and sculpted desert landscaping. The air was fresh and smelled of earth and sagebrush. For the first time in days, I felt a hint of peace. I made a coffee and sat on the balcony with my phone in my hand. A notification appeared: movement detected at the front door. I took a deep breath and opened the security camera app. The show had begun. The image was sharp. A moving truck from one of the most expensive companies in the city was parked in front of my building. Two men in crisp uniforms began unloading boxes. And then they appeared. My father, Robert, walked ahead with the arrogance of a general taking a city. My mother, Paula, at his side, wearing a triumphant smile. Behind them, Carly, in oversized sunglasses that did little to hide her theatrical suffering. And to complete the spectacle, my Aunt Diana, my mother's sister and the official family gossip, trailing just behind, no doubt there to supervise the victory and report it to the rest of the clan. They arrived at my door, and my father knocked with a sharp, impatient knock. They waited. He pounded, harder this time. Then the door opened. Eric stood in the doorway wearing a white t-shirt and jeans, looking calm, almost sleepy. He leaned casually against the frame, blocking the entrance. "Good morning," he said, polite and even-toned. "How can I help you?" My father didn't even acknowledge him. He tried to step forward, as if Eric were invisible. "I'm the owner of this family. We're here to move my daughter in." Eric didn't budge. He raised his arm to stop him, maintaining a respectful tone. "With all due respect, sir, I believe there's a misunderstanding. I am the legal resident of this apartment." My father's face shifted, from arrogance to confusion, then to fury. "Who the hell are you?" "My name is Eric Rogers," Eric replied calmly, "and I have a valid loan for use agreement registered with the building's administration. Here it is." He pulled a folded document from his pocket and held it out. That was when my mother intervened. Her voice sharpened into a shriek. "This is ridiculous. This is our daughter's apartment. Who do you think you are to forbid us entry?" My Aunt Diana, clearly savoring the unfolding drama, pulled out her phone and began filming, a malicious smile stretching across her face. "Let's make sure there's evidence of this disgrace." As the argument escalated, I watched on my phone screen as Eric, with graceful discretion, activated something on his own device. He was recording the audio, just as I had asked. Then, like a guardian angel in uniform, Mr. Peterson, the concierge, appeared in the hallway. He had been alerted by the noise. "Mr. and Mrs. Durand, good morning," he said with calm professionalism that made my mother's shouting seem even more absurd. "Is there a problem?" "This man won't let us into my daughter's apartment," my father barked, jabbing a finger toward Eric. Mr. Peterson looked from Eric to my father. "Sir, with all due respect, this young man, Mr. Rogers, has a legally registered contract with the building administration. He is the official resident of the unit for the coming weeks." He added, more firmly, "I must ask you not to disturb the neighbors. Please resolve any personal matters through the appropriate channels, not in the common areas of the building." Mr. Peterson's calm authority, and the fact that he represented rules they could not bend, delivered the final blow. My father's face was a picture of contained fury and public embarrassment. My mother went silent, stunned. Carly looked like she wanted to sink into the floor. Even the movers exchanged glances of sympathy mixed with mild amusement. Defeated, they turned around and left. My Aunt Diana put away her phone, though her satisfied smirk made it clear that the video was already on its way to every corner of the family chat. A few minutes later, my phone vibrated. It was a message from Eric. Attached was an audio file and a simple note: "Mission accomplished." I saved both the video feed and Eric's recording in a secure folder in the cloud. The first battle was over, but deep down, I knew the war was just beginning. Over the next couple of days, my phone became a digital battlefield. Multiple missed calls from my father. Even more from my mother. An avalanche of text messages that swung wildly between fury and pleading. I cannot believe the public humiliation you subjected us to. You are a disgrace to me, my father wrote. Your father is furious. You have a heart of stone, Claire. How could you do this to us? After everything we've done for you, came from my mother. Aunt Diana's video, of course, was now the headliner in the extended family chat. Distant cousins, people who hadn't spoken to me in years, suddenly found the time to message me their disappointment in my selfish attitude. But the offensive didn't end there. Aunt Diana, ever the general of the gossip brigade, wasted no time spreading a new, much more poisonous rumor. She kicked out her own family to move in her lover. How shameless. Suddenly, my defense of personal space had been twisted into a cheap soap opera about infidelity. Meanwhile, Carly was orchestrating her own emotional campaign on Instagram. She posted a black and white selfie, eyes swollen, lips trembling, full martyr mode, with a dramatic caption, "Sometimes the ones who should protect you are the ones who hurt you the most." Grateful for the few friends who were truly family. The supportive comments came quickly. All condemning the heartless sister. Me. I ignored it. I switched my phone to airplane mode and tried to focus on the vineyard hills, the wine, the desert breeze. I tried to breathe. But I was not idle. I had already forwarded screenshots of the text messages, the video of the door confrontation, and the rumor about me and Eric to Claire. She called that afternoon. They're using every tactic in the manipulator's handbook, she said, her voice even, calm. But while they play dirty, we play smart. And, I have news. She paused. Claire. The firm I work for is representing Carly's ex-fiancé. There was silence on the line. She cloned his cards. She emptied one of his investment accounts. Almost $28,000. That's why he dumped her. It wasn't a breakup, it was an expulsion for financial fraud. An icy chill passed through me. Whatever compassion I had left for my sister evaporated. But that's not all, Claire continued. Your instincts were right. Something is off about your father's finances and Matthew's so-called businesses. I'm tracing a large transfer from one of your dad's companies to a shell account. The recipient appears to be linked to your brother. Give me a little more time. My voice was steel. Use whatever you have to. And Claire, forward the audio file to my parents and to Aunt Diana. Let them hear their own performance. At your command, General, Claire replied without missing a beat. I knew sending that audio would be like throwing gasoline on a fire. But I didn't care. I wasn't trying to calm them anymore. I was showing them that I had weapons too. And mine were made of truth. That night, I sat outside with a glass of wine, looking up at the vast, clear desert sky. The rage had burned off, leaving something stronger in its place. Clarity. This was no longer about an extra room. It was about dismantling a toxic and corrupt family system that had fed on my silence for far too long. I was dealing with a cover-up, with lies, with a sense of entitlement that went beyond irrational. The architect in me knew that sometimes, to build something new and solid, you first have to demolish the old, rotten structure down to its foundations. And I had the dynamite in my hands. 2 days after the digital bombardment, I received an email from my father. The subject line read, "Urgent family meeting." The tone was not a request, but a command. I expect you tomorrow at 7 p.m. in my office at the corporate building. It is imperative that you attend. I consulted Claire. Go, she said. But do not go alone, and bring your own agenda. I replied to my father's email with one sentence, I will be there. I will be accompanied by my legal counsel, Claire Davis. I knew that would enrage him. But that was the point. It wasn't a family argument anymore. It was a negotiation. However, my father had one last trick up his sleeve. A few hours before the meeting, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered. The voice on the other end belonged to the director of a major real estate consortium, the one I was about to close the biggest project of my career with. Claire, what a shame, the man said awkwardly. I'm calling to inform you that we've decided to put the project on hold. Certain, worrying rumors have reached us regarding your reliability and family circumstances. We don't like getting involved in personal problems. I hung up and felt the ground open up beneath me. I understood instantly. My father, in an act of supreme cowardice, was trying to destroy me professionally. He was using his connections to sabotage my career. The stakes had just been raised to a level I had never imagined. I arrived at the boardroom of his office with Claire by my side. The room had been designed to intimidate: dark wood, heavy leather chairs, and a panoramic view of the city that screamed power. Robert and Paula were already there. Carly sat beside them, avoiding my gaze. My father's expression was glacial. My mother's face held the practiced look of tragic martyrdom. Carly didn't dare meet my eyes. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. Thank you for coming, he said coolly, although I see you've decided to bring strangers into our affairs. I hope we can resolve this. Your behavior has been unacceptable. Shameful. He was interrupted by my mother, who clutched her chest and moaned theatrically. Oh, Robert, it hurts. I feel a tightness in my chest. This child is killing me. The performance was so crude it was almost comical. Claire didn't blink. Do you need me to call an ambulance, Mrs. Durand? She asked, her voice like a scalpel. Or if this is just an act for pity, I suggest you save it. We are not here for that. My mother glared but went silent, keeping her hand on her chest like a prop. Robert, seething, resumed the assault. Since you're so fond of legalities, he said with contempt, sliding a thick stack of papers across the mahogany table, here's a detailed invoice for your upbringing, your education, your food, your clothing. Every cent we invested in you. Consider helping your sister, just a small down payment. I looked at the so-called invoice. It was absurd. A monument to his arrogance. But instead of fury, I felt an eerie calm. The calm of someone holding the winning card. With slow, deliberate movement, I pulled a folder from my portfolio and laid it gently beside his stack. Speaking of debts, Dad, I said clearly, I brought some real ones. I opened the folder. Here are the bank records of a $110,000 transfer from one of your companies to a shell account in the Cayman Islands. An account, coincidentally, in Matthew's name. My father paled. A debt you forgave him after he embezzled from your own company to fund his latest cryptocurrency scheme. I looked at him, unwavering. This is real. It's documented. Your invoice is an insult. And as for the client I lost this afternoon? That's defamation. And professional sabotage. I slid the audio recordings forward. We have recordings of your threats. We have witnesses. And now, this. I pointed to the two folders. Checkmate. The silence in the boardroom was thicker than the marble slab of the table. My father's smugness evaporated, replaced by a mask of disbelief. His aura of control collapsed like a balloon with a pinhole. For the first time in my life, I saw him exposed. Powerless. My mother stared down at the table. Her expression was no longer one of grief, it was confusion. Disorientation. The evaluation about Matthew, their golden boy, had shattered her script. And then Carly broke. It wasn't an explosion. It was a slow collapse, like a structure sinking into itself. Tears rolled down her cheeks, silent, unfiltered. It's true, she whispered. Her voice barely a breath. We all turned. It's all true. She looked up, not at me, but at our parents. I stole from my fiancé. He didn't leave me. He threw me out like garbage when he figured out that I had cloned his cards. She paused, shaking, then went on. And the thing with Matthew? I knew. We all knew. And we stayed quiet. Her voice gained strength, desperate, shaking off years of repression. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of being useless. And it's your fault. She turned to our parents, pointing at them. You never taught me to fend for myself. Every time I messed up, you fixed it with money. Every time I failed, you told me I was too sensitive for this world. You turned me into a hollow, lying porcelain doll. Carly's confession wasn't a weapon meant to save me, as I might have hoped in a more naive version of my life. It was a surrender. The sound of her own chains breaking. The room sank into deeper silence. The truth, raw and unadorned, had finally taken up all the space. I stood up, and the movement seemed to shake them out of their trance. Claire rose beside me. There was no triumph on my face, only exhaustion. But beneath that exhaustion, a new kind of strength. A spine forged in the fire of the past week. I never wanted this war, I said, my voice calm and level, a tone I barely recognized as my own. I only wanted my space. I only wanted my life to be respected. For my achievements to mean something. For my no to be heard. I looked at them, Robert, Paula, Carly, all broken and exposed. You mistook my independence for a betrayal. You mistook my boundaries for defiance. That's your problem. It's no longer mine. I turned and walked toward the door. Claire followed. Before leaving, I stopped and looked back one last time. Don't look for me. Don't call me. I need space and time to process the level of damage you tried to inflict. I met my father's eyes. The next communication you receive won't be from me. It will come from my lawyer. She'll discuss with your legal team the terms of a formal written apology for the defamation and sabotage. Or, if you prefer, we can resolve this in court. Your choice. I walked out of that office, closing the door behind me, leaving them amid the ruins of their own dysfunctional kingdom. As I walked down the hallway of the pristine corporate tower, I felt like I was finally breathing clean air. The war was over. And though the battlefield was littered with debris, I was still standing. The weeks that followed were nearly silent. It wasn't an uncomfortable or tense silence, it was simply empty. A blank space where there used to be constant noise, guilt, and drama. And in that space, I began to rebuild. Just as she promised, Claire handled everything. 1 week later, I received a courier envelope. Inside was a formal apology drafted by my father's legal team, signed by him. Cold. Impersonal. But real. Attached was a check, compensation for the professional damages caused when he tried to destroy my reputation. I didn't need the money. But I cashed it anyway. It was proof that even he couldn't escape consequences. That the old world had ended. A month later, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. A photo appeared on the screen, Carly, in a barista's uniform, smiling shyly at the camera. The message was short, starting from the bottom. For real this time. I'm going to therapy. When you're ready, if you ever are, I'd love to treat you to a coffee. My treat. I stared at the photo for a long time. The smile wasn't the polished Instagram performance. It was the weary, shaky smile of someone learning to stand for the first time. I replied with just a few words, that sounds like a good start. We met 2 weeks later. The conversation was awkward, full of the quiet hesitations that wounds leave behind, but it was honest. She told me about her job. How hard it was to wake up at 5 every morning. How humiliating and, strangely, liberating it was to earn her own money, even if it wasn't much. I didn't offer advice. I didn't try to fix anything. I just listened. It was the first brick in a new bridge. One built on solid, honest ground. My relationship with my parents is different now. Nearly non-existent. Paula tried a few guilt-laced messages about loneliness and the family being broken. I didn't reply. Eventually, they stopped. I haven't spoken to Robert since the day I left that boardroom. Maybe one day time will allow for something new, but I don't seek it. I don't need it. The old family model, the one orbiting around his dominance and rules, is gone. And I don't regret it. 6 months have passed. Right now, I'm on my balcony, my sanctuary. The afternoon sun is warming my latest blueprints. But they're no longer for a skyscraper or a high-rise. I'm designing a community center for a low-income neighborhood in Mesa. A personal project that fulfills me more deeply than any corporate tower ever could. My phone rings. It's Carly. We chat for a few minutes. A light, real conversation. She tells me she's thinking of going back to school, this time for something she truly loves, and paying for it herself. I smile. After we hang up, I stare at the skyline. The mountains cut cleanly against the orange horizon. The peace I feel now isn't delicate. It isn't dependent on anyone else staying quiet. It's forged in fire. Built with steel boundaries. Earned. I don't know what the future holds for the Durands. There are wounds that may never fully heal. But I no longer wait for their approval. I no longer fear their anger. For the first time in my life, the space I inhabit, both physical and emotional, is completely, unapologetically mine. The architect has finally designed and built her masterpiece, a life on her own terms. And the view from here is magnificent. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. I didn't tell this story for sympathy. I told it because maybe, just maybe, someone out there needed to hear that they're not crazy for drawing a boundary. That you're not selfish for needing peace. That it's okay to walk away, even from people who say they love you, if what they offer isn't love, it's control. So, if you've ever gone through something like this, leave a comment. Share your story. You never know who you might help just by speaking up. And if you're standing at the edge of your own war, wondering whether your voice is worth using, this is your sign. Use it. Take up space. Build something beautiful. Even if you have to tear everything down first to make room. Because what's on the other side of that silence might just be the life you were meant to live all along.